What's something you saw you were definitely not supposed to see? Story 1. When I started a new job, someone had left a bunch of HR files on the computer I was given. I opened one up, not sure what it was, and I got to see every employee's salary in the company, even the CEO. The next day, it was gone. My boss realized his mistake and logged into my system and deleted the files. It was a memorable experience. Story 2. When I was in college, I worked at an arcade and mini golf joint that seemed to give zero fucks about actually making money, but was never in any kind of financial trouble. When I got hired, the owner literally said, "I pay minimum wage and I expect to get minimum work for it." I worked the front counter and collected money for the mini golf and sold cups of coins, or you could just use the coin changer. The till was completely busted and would be off by $50 or more in either direction, no matter what you did. I realized very quickly that I could just pretend to ring up golf fees and cups of tokens and pocket the cash. So I'd pocket $30 to $40 every shift and nobody seemed to give a shit. One of the assistant managers let me take a break 20 minutes after I'd just taken a break because some of my friends had shown up and wanted to smoke a bowl with me. He was like, "That's totally more important than your job." It was awesome. Then one day I walked into the owner's office while the secretary was recording figures in the ledger. I can read upside down pretty well, and it was very obvious that the figures she was recording had fuck all to do with the business we were doing. We sold maybe $60 of golf fees a night, maybe $100 in cup coins. But she was recording $600 and $1,000 for each. I commented on the discrepancy and quipped about how someone would think we're in the laundry business, and she got really squirrely and told me to leave the office. The next day, the owner called me into his office, and we had a very circumspect conversation about how much I was enjoying working there and enjoying the perks of the job. And I very much got the sense that he was trying to decide if I was going to tell anyone anything. Apparently, he decided I wasn't, and I wasn't. So I kept working there. About a year later, the owner was arrested for money laundering, and we all got fired. Still, the best job I've ever had. The mob is an A-plus employer, would work in a fake business again. Story 3. As a middle schooler, I picked up a book at the library, flipped through the pages, and found an application for a replacement birth certificate for some old man. It had every detail about his personal identification on it, so naturally I took it home thinking, I'll just hold on to this in case I ever need to assume a fake identity by pretending to be an 80-year-old man and flee the country. My mom found it and had to explain to me that, no, we don't steal people's identities. Story 4. When I was 14, a friend hosted a birthday party at his house with all the parents invited. Needed to use the restroom, but the main one was occupied, so my friend told me I can use the one in his mom's bedroom. As I walked up to the door, I could hear somebody in there, so I decided to wait until whoever was there finished. A good 10 minutes later, my friend's mom, who was hosting the party, and another good friend's stepfather walked out and see me standing there all confused. They asked what I was doing there, and I just said I was waiting to use the bathroom. Surprisingly, they played it cool and just said I can use it now and walked off. Story 5. I was about 8 or 9 and my parents were going to be out of town, so they had me and siblings stay with family from church. Once we got to the house, which was really nice by the way, they had one rule. You can play wherever you want, but the basement is off limits. Me being the little bastard I was, snuck down there the first chance I got and was supremely disappointed only to find rows and rows of plants growing under lights. Story 6. So I'm fresh out of school and taking a gap year before starting university. I managed to get a job working for the USAF at an air base in the UK. Details of the job aren't important. So, about 2 a.m. on this particular night in early 1988, the runway lights that are normally off come on briefly for perhaps 30 seconds, then go off. That's when I clearly hear something landing on the runway, and off to the right of the runway, one of the larger hangars opens its doors. In the pitch black, the light from that hangar is quite spectacular. That's when I see it. A small black triangular aircraft rolls straight into that hangar, and within seconds, the doors close behind it. This was my honest thought when I saw that. I definitely was not supposed to have seen that. I put my cigarette, hey, I was young and dumb, out and walked back into my building. A few weeks later, we got our first pictures of the F-117 Nighthawk, followed by a confirmation that it existed. I smiled a little and thought to myself, I already knew about that. Story 7. I found my dad's will. I was on his computer while he was at work. Actually, I'm searching for this porn, and ended up finding a strangely titled Word document. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. It contained a note to each of his kids. It wasn't until I got to the last one, my youngest brother, that I realized it wasn't just a will. The start of that line read something along the lines of, "If anything is going to make me change my mind now, it's writing this part." I realized I had found my dad's suicide note. I was about 14 or 15 at the time and had no idea how to go and talk to him about it. I decided to just keep it to myself. He started buying us gifts and stuff, and I would get really scared, and I just kept it to myself. I remember one day on the weekend I woke up in bed to a loud bang coming from my dad's room. I laid there in bed for probably half an hour, frozen. Once I worked up the strength, I went to his room and opened the door. He wasn't in the bedroom, so I was confused until I saw that the bedroom window was open. What actually happened is that there was a gust of wind, and the wind had slammed the door shut, but my paranoid brain had heard a gunshot. After that, I was laughing hysterically and don't have much memory of the day past that. Shortly after this incident, my dad had returned most of the gifts he bought his kids, and I slowly started to believe that he had changed his mind. I never confronted him about it until last year, about 14 years or so later, but I never fully accepted that he was okay now. I called him distraught about a separate matter, and he started talking to me about depression. He told me on his own about how he considered taking his life and went into detail about it, and all I could do was cry and tell him, I know. We talked a lot longer after that, and we were finally able to put it to rest. Story 8. I was working part-time at a library for a school subject. One day they made me enter the data for new books into the library's computer system. As I worked, I did something, don't know what, that made Windows Outlook display onto the PC screen, along with some emails by the librarians directed to my teacher and to the other librarians. The emails basically said that I was really good at my job and very hardworking, and that the collaboration would be a very beneficial thing for both me and them. I wasn't supposed to read those messages, but they made me feel really happy. Story 9. Growing up with my little brother and single mom, we never had a lot, but she made sure we always had a safe and decent place to live and that there was always food on the table. She never really ate much. I remember dinners of baked chicken, beef stew, salmon. It was a lot cheaper a million years ago. Good food, but nothing terribly extravagant. Always nutritious. Yet she barely ever ate. When I was 10, I saw her eating a PB&J on crackers in her room after dinner. That's when I realized there was never enough food for all three of us. She would cook what we had for my brother and I, and would eat the bare minimum, always out of sight, so that my brother and I wouldn't worry about the actual level of poverty we were at. I never asked for another material thing from her after that night.